I don't think asexuality or identifying as asexual would be an effective means through which to achieve eternal youth. Hello lovely humans, welcome to this space on the internet. This is episode 2 of Busting Myths and Misconceptions about Asexuality. If you haven't seen episode 1, go watch it. It addresses different myths and misconceptions to do with confusion and denial. Today's episode is going to be addressing different myths and misconceptions that have to do with the infantilization of asexual people. I've started this video series in an attempt to do my absolute best to dismantle different misconceptions and stereotypes and misinformation that float around the internet in particular, and also our everyday lives about asexuality. Because while I know a lot about the asexual community and the aspec community in general, and even the queer community, when you're not directly in these spaces, I know many of us encounter a lot of different forms of acephobia, hatred, discrimination, and just general misunderstanding where there doesn't need to be misunderstanding. Let's get into our myths and misconceptions. Our first misconception in this video, number 9 overall in the series. Remember, go watch the first 8 in the first episode. Anyways, so misconception number 9, asexuality is just a phase that we'll get over. A lot of queer people get this one, and it's kind of amazing just how much allosexuals don't want people to be asexual, because like, why do we have to get over it? What's so wrong with being ace that it's something we must pass? Or maybe it's that we're thought to be lying about our identity, or just think that saying we're asexual makes us cool. In saying this, you would be assuming that asexual people aren't to be trusted or believed about their own self-understanding in favor of your idea of how aces should be or feel. As if an allosexual person, or even just a person, would know better than someone experiencing it for themselves. Implying that asexuality is only a phase is to equate us with a sense of instability and indecisiveness, implying that we'll grow out of it as if we're children with a childish interest, or perhaps more closely a demonstration of adolescence, which is untrue. Misconception number 10. We are childish, innocent, naive, immature, and clueless about sex and sexuality. For example, the assumption that we can't tell if someone is attractive. Being asexual can, in many cases, indicate next to nothing about someone's character. The assumption that because we're not sexually attracted to others that we don't understand the concept of sexuality as a whole is actually a bit insulting. I would actually argue that in many cases, aces actually have to dissect and understand sexuality more than most allosexuals in order to arrive at the conclusion that they are ace. This goes for many queer folk, but I would think asexual people in particular. We really have to deconstruct what sexuality means in general and to us. Where the misconception here may lie is the idea that asexuals don't understand sexual attraction and its associates, in the sense that they've perhaps never experienced it themselves. Being confused or feeling alienated from the allosexual experience, the not asexual experience, does not incapacitate us from understanding sexual identity and sexual orientation and sexuality in general, despite the possibility that we may indeed view it or understand it differently as asexual people. However, I'd argue that this sort of variation in perspective on sexuality is normal and in fact beneficial to everyone, and likely true of various subsets of queer people, because we all do come with a different understanding of sexuality, and that's part of why the queer community is as diverse as it is. And thus, there are no grounds on which to declare that aces are innocent or naive or lack the capacity of a thorough adult understanding of sexual matters. And misconception number 11, the last one for this episode, which will be a shorter episode, is we are refusing to grow up or have Peter Pan syndrome. I think some people have a difficult time differentiating between a child's lack of sexual attraction and asexuality, because asexuality is not a matter of social or physical inability to feel sexual feelings. It's that as people with developed brains and bodies and social relationships, we do not feel inclined towards people in a sexual way, or at least not in the same way as those who are allosexual. So I find it hard to imagine someone calling themselves asexual in an attempt to remain childlike, because asexuality isn't characteristic of childhood or children. And I've actually heard from a lot of asexual people in asexual spaces that, particularly in their adolescent years, they felt particularly mature for not being so infatuated with the idea of sex, which is a very particular subset of the asexual community. And I wouldn't argue that that's everyone in the asexual community whatsoever, but I do think that a lot of asexuals definitely do not feel less mature than their peers. So even if we are trying to avoid adulthood, which at this point I honestly am, I don't think asexuality or identifying as asexual would be an effective means through which to achieve eternal youth. Those were our 3 misconceptions for today's episode. What do you think about these? Have you encountered this sort of misinformation in your life as an asexual person or even as an allosexual person? Do you have any further commentary on anything I've mentioned here? Put it down in the comments. I love reading your comments as long as they're not mean. And we'll hopefully see you on our next episode of Misconceptions about Asexuality, which will be on the topic of relationships. That one will be a bit of a beefy one, so definitely stay tuned. Thank you for watching this video. See you next time on this space in the internet. Love you.